Deep in the forests of North America, a creature is said to exist. A creature that people are encountering.
Seriously, look how big it is.
With far too many reports to ignore, there are elements of truth behind these accounts that mankind can no longer
It's
ignore.
created almost this obsession where I need to find out
Could the
more.
breeding population of large, upright, hairy hominids really exist in North America? Or is there something more paranormal at work here? Deep in the woods. If just one footprint, one wood knock, or one howl is real, then man's understanding of primate evolution would be changed forever. Join Glenn Purcell and the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective as they delve further into the mysteries of Bigfoot and other paranormal phenomena through the eyes of witnesses, investigators, critics, and skeptics. Join us as we look to discover what lurks from behind tall trees.
Hi, everybody. We're at a special night tonight. We normally do Wednesdays, but we're doing Sunday tonight. You were at a festival this weekend. So,
Yes.
And you drive truck, right? So you're not home during the week a lot.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
it's tough to get on anything during the week.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So special night, special time. We are here with Oldbear, who is the creator of Oldbear Dens of Bigfoot.
Mhm.
And I have had the privilege of meeting you several times now, and I just love you and your wife. You are two of my most favorite people ever. And but I don't think that I have ever heard your story, like how you got started in this crazy world of Bigfoot. Do you mind sharing with us what got you going?
I don't mind. Picture a 220-pound, 16-year-old kid, plays football. Tough as nails is what my dad used to call me. Play football, break fingers, didn't make a difference, still played. Been hurt, played hurt. Bad knee, all this stuff, all kinds of pain. Just keep playing. My dad and I went deer hunting on December 3rd in the year 1984. And we got to this place in Work County, West Virginia, and it's the last day of our bucks only firearm season. So carry high powered rifles. And we get there and it's 62, 63, somewhere around there in the middle 60s. It's pretty warm for here in West Virginia, in December. And we went deer hunting and Dad drove. I'm 16. He still wouldn't let me drive. I tried. It just, no. But I did talk him into letting me go by myself. This is the first time my dad had ever let me go by myself. And there was two things. He said, if there's no one out there on that ridge, you can go by hunting by yourself. But I have to know where you are. You have to pick a spot, go there, and sit down. Yes, sir. I told him where I was going to be. I even showed him on the way out. Right over the hill from where you are now, Dad. This is where I'm going to be. So he goes out the hill about a mile out the ridge. I don't know why I say it's a hill. It just seems like it goes up and down and up and down. And he goes out the ridge, and there's a big place out there where they had timbered years before, and it's a big area, and it's got a lot of rock on it. And that way you didn't have to walk in the mud.
Right.
And it was fairly dry that year. But we're out there in a full size one of them old K5 Blazers, and Dad says, "All right, you load your gun, put your vest on, your hat, blaze on, your hat on, walk out there, you'll be fine." That was 2 o'clock. I walked a mile in probably. I don't think I ever touched the gravel because I was so elated because my dad trusted me enough to go deer hunting by myself. In my family, that was a rite of passage. Um, Dad considered you a grown man at that point, and you're still his kid no matter what. I was always his kid until my dad passed. I was still his little red-headed boy that run around in diapers, and that's just the way parents see you. And I went to where I told him. I walked 2 flats down. The road's up here, then there's the hill goes down a little bit, it flattens out, then it goes down again, and there was this huge boulder off to your left. I'm about 10 feet from it, 10, 15 feet. At that point, I clear out a spot. I sit down beside a big oak tree. It's a big white oak tree that was right there, and I always liked being there. I like that spot a lot. I'm sitting there. It's probably 2:30 now. I hear something running through the leaves coming from my left, from behind this huge boulder. There's a big hollow that goes in there to an old logging road, and then it goes up the hill to the main ridge road. I'm like, okay, well, there's deer here. They're coming. So I put my rifle up to my shoulder. I'm carrying a 30-30 Model 94 Winchester. It's a lever action rifle. It's 7 in the tube, 1 in the chamber. And I'm sitting there, and these 3 does come running out, and they stop probably 20, 30 yards away from me to my right. And they're panting. Their tongues are hanging out. They've been run hard. And I'm thinking, all right, this is time of year when bucks chase does around. And I'm expecting a buck to come along. They're showing all the signs in my 16-year-old head of being chased by a white-tailed deer. They're there maybe 15, 20 seconds, maybe to maximum 30 seconds. And all of a sudden they take off. Well, I'm sitting there and I'm listening. And I hear something walking, and it sounds like a buck that is just casually walking down off that hill, down in through that little hollow and along that flat. And it couldn't have been no more than 40 yards. It's out of sight because this boulder, the height of it is probably 7.5 feet. And the width of it, you're probably talking 12 feet, 14 feet wide. And they rolled it over there with a D9 dozer when they logged that area 40 years ago, because it used to be where the road was at. There's a rock cliff that used to run around the left side of the hill if you're facing back towards the main road.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there and I hear grunting. The deer grunting, a buck grunting, the sound of it, Gwen. I mean, you've hunted some too. So,
yep.
But the thing of it is, I'm hearing this sound and I catch movement and I think it's a red squirrel on top of this boulder. I'm like, how the heck did you get up there? And I'm waiting on this deer to step out. Now I've got the rifle up here and I'm holding it like you're supposed to, the way you're taught. And I'm sitting there and the grunting stops, the footfalls stop, and I'm like, what the? And I don't see the squirrel anymore on top of the boulder, or what I thought was a squirrel, which wasn't actually a squirrel. I didn't know it at the time. And then I hear another step. And at that point, I've got the rifle and I've snug it into my shoulder, expecting a white-tailed buck to step out. I was going to give it far enough out to put a bullet through its chest and drop it in its tracks. That's not what stepped out. This thing was a reddish brown collar, almost like an auburn colored hair. 7.5, 8 foot tall, probably taller than that, but it walked out, bent knees, leaning forward, and when it steps out, it's grunting. It's breathing heavy. What I mistook for grunting, being a 16-year-old kid wanting to get a white-tailed deer. Your dad let you go by yourself. First time you want to get one, it would have been my first white-tailed buck. It didn't happen that way. This thing steps out, takes 3 or 4 steps away from the boulder. Now its stride was nowhere close to what my little steps compared to this thing. 4.5, 5 foot long strides. So this point, it's dead even with me. And it stands there and it's just it's just breathing real heavy, and it's moving. Its whole upper body is moving when it breathes. And all of a sudden it just kind of like stops mid breath. And I'm like, uh-oh. Now I'm trying to figure out what this is. I've never heard of Bigfoot. This was back in 1984. Bigfoot wasn't a thing. We didn't have the internet.
Right.
If you see anything on TV, it would have been the Patterson Gimlin film, or somebody made a B-rate movie about Bigfoot. The year before, in 1983, it wasn't the same date, but the last day of rifle season, I stayed up with my dad, and we watched The Legend of Boggy Creek. First time I'd ever seen anything, didn't know nothing about Bigfoot. And at the end of the movie, it kind of frightened me a little bit. I'm a 15-year-old kid, it was kind of frightening. Thing reaching through the windows and all this stuff. And I looked at my dad and I said, "Dad, those things real?" He said, "No, son, that's just Hollyweird." And that was his words. And I said, "What, Dad?" I was kind of like laughing, and he's like, "It's just Hollywood, son. It's make believe. It ain't no big deal. Don't worry about it. You'll never have to worry about that here in state of West Virginia." Okay, Dad. A year later, I can't say that. I'm looking at what I perceive to be one of these creatures from The Legend of Boggy Creek. It didn't have the super long, it didn't have that 18, 20 inch long hair it seemed like the creature had, but it had 6 or 8 inch long hair hanging off its arms, hanging down across its hands, and down, it had thick hair across its chest, and it had long hair on its legs, and it looked pretty well kept. And by that I mean, it didn't look like it had a bunch of leaves and sticks and mud and all that stuff in its hair. Well, at this point, the thing turns its upper body. It didn't turn its head, turned its whole upper body, and looked at me, and it had that surprise, like, "Where did you come from?" And I'm sitting there again, my back against this tree, my knees are up. I'm sitting there with a blaze orange cap on, a blaze orange, jacket on. I had a vest on and a red and blue flannel shirt. That's just the way you dressed to go hunting when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it just has that big, wide eyes like, where did you come from and how did you get here?
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there going, no, this is not going to be good. I'm going to be dinner. Oh, this ain't going to be good. That's the only thing that's going through my head. And then it kind of rolls its lips back after standing there looking at me for 10 or 15 seconds. It rolls its lips up, shows its teeth, and starts a low guttural growl at me. And that guttural growl was enough to make me wish that I was still home and I didn't use my mom to get my dad to take me deer hunting. I had regretted going deer hunting that day. It took a step towards me. Now, it's 20 feet from me when it stopped. Well, now it's taking that 4 foot, 5 foot stride towards me. Now I'm down to 15. And it's still growling, and it's growling more and louder and everything else. When it took that step, it got louder. Not because of the proximity, but because it was growling louder from its diaphragm and its chest. And this thing had a big long scar across its left eye down to its cheek. And at that point, I'm like, oh no, you take another step, I'm lowering the boom on you. I'm cocking this hammer and I'm squeezing the trigger. There ain't gonna be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'm looking down the open sights on that rifle. And it starts to take that second step, and that hammer, my thumb automatically pulls the hammer back. All I got to do is just barely squeeze the trigger. And there would have been no more question about Bigfoot. But in mid stride, this thing stops, and it's got one leg up, and it's standing on one leg. It just stops rock still, like. Then it gets that kind of scared, excited look on its face, like, oh, this is trouble. And it quits growling, it closes its mouth, it steps back, and then starts turning its upper body, looking the way that it came, and then out the ridge where the deer went. Now, if it goes out that ridge, it'll run into my dad. My dad wouldn't ask questions. He's carrying a 30-06 semi-auto. If it had ran in front of him and stopped, it had been on the ground. There wouldn't have been the answer would have been right there. And I'm sitting there, and it turns 2 or 3 times, and it stops and looks at me, and it'll slowly turn its upper body the whole time. It never turned its head very far. And while I think it didn't turn its head, it's because of the muscle structure that looked like it was coming from the back of its head, halfway up its head, down to its shoulders. And I'm sitting there, and this thing has got muscles on it. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a little kid compared to this thing. The biggest he's ever been. Looks like he'd be a 15, 16-year-old kid to himself. And, as a bodybuilder. And, I'm mesmerized. I'm scared, but because of my older brother, my dad, my uncles, other family members, you don't freak out. They taught us when we was little. I started hunting when I was 7. I'm 16 at this point. You know, I've got 9 years of hunting under my belt with my dad and my brothers and my uncles and my aunts and cousins and everything else. And they all told us and taught us, keep your emotions in check. When that rifle is where it can be fired, or a shotgun or a bow, you just leave your emotions out of it and you let your body do what it knows to do because you practice. And finally, this creature just turns completely to the right and just flat out takes off running behind the boulder. And I'm still sitting there with the rifle up, and I've watched this thing run off. But you would think that at that point in time, 16-year-old kid would let the hammer off. No, I did not. I stood up and I said, and I'm talking to myself, you know, it's a sign of stress. And I said, that wasn't real. There's no way. Dad's told me them things don't exist in this state. I don't have to worry about these. And I turn and I start towards the top of the bank to get back on the road to go back out to the truck. And I get to the top of the bank and I'm fighting with myself verbally out loud. No, I saw that thing. That was real. No, it couldn't. Dad said it's not. And I trust my dad. You know, I'm a 16-year-old kid. I trust my parents. You know, your parents back then, they may not be the smartest people in the world, but to you, they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're never wrong. And then this thing screams. And I heard it stop, probably 150, 200 yards up near the old logging road that was up there. And when it screamed, I felt it. It's like it cupped its mouth and directed it right at me. It knew where I was at. And I'm like, I'm going to the truck. And I'm like, well, I'll let, and I started to let the hammer off. And I'm like, no, I might need to leave it on open. Because I don't know what this thing's going to do. Is it going to come running up behind me, try to grab me? And I might need that split second of pulling that hammer back to save my own life. And I pretty much became an Olympic, one of those Olympic walkers, you know, the fast walkers. I covered a mile in probably 10, 12 minutes. That's pretty fast for someone, you know. And I get back out there, and my dad, I know he heard the sound. He won't admit, he never admitted to it. But I know he heard that sound, that scream. And I get back out there and he's coming back to the Blazer. He's starting to come to me because he had to have heard that. Mm-hmm. As loud as it was, he's a mile out the road. There's no way that my dad didn't hear it. There ain't no leaves on the trees to block the sound. There ain't no brush. Everything's, you know, dead and brown and on the ground. And I get back out there and I look up and I see him and he looks at me and he said, "What is wrong with you?" Now, evidently I had a petrified, scared to death look on my face. My dad knew me. Nothing scared me. Nothing at that point ever scared me. I'd been close to black bear, within 10 feet of black bear. Never, ever scared me. I've had him start climbing up my tree when I was bow hunting. And it never bothered me. And my dad, he's like, "What is wrong?" "I don't want to talk about it." He said, "Do what?" In that fatherly tone. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I want to go home. Let's go home, Dad. You tell me what's wrong and I'll take you home. Otherwise, I'm going to pull his belt off and you're going to be telling me one way or another, because it made him mad because I stood up to him. I've never done that. Never did that when I was little. That was the first time I ever said anything and told my dad no. To him, that was saying no. And he looked at me and he said, boy, something happened. Tell me what happened. And I walked past him. And he didn't try to reach out and grab me. You know, I was a big kid and I was strong. And you know, my dad, he's not a big man. He never was. And I walked past him and I said, Dad, I just want to go home. And he looked at me and he said, son, he turned and I looked back at him and he turned around and he said, put your gun and stuff up. I walked over the back of the truck. I pumped 8 rounds out of that rifle, put the hammer back, threw it in the gun case, and threw the shells in the gun case. That's a big no-no in my family. You don't ever do that. I took my vest off, threw it in the back, took my hat off, threw it in the back, walked up, got in the front passenger seat of the Blazer, and sit in the seat and rolled, cracked the window, and then I rolled it back up, and I locked the door. When I locked that door, my dad walked to the back of the truck. He knew something bad was wrong. He thought, I guess what was going through his mind, because he asked me, he said, did you shoot someone? Did you shoot a doe or something? And I'm like, no, Dad. I didn't do anything like that. I said, all 8 shells are in my case. Let's go home. So he unloaded his rifle, put it away like he always does, put the shells back in the cartridge holder, and he took his coat off, took his hat off, come back up, shut the tailgate, rolled the window up, come up, got in the driver's seat, started the Blazer up, and he said, what's wrong? What is going on? I said, Dad, I'm not talking about it. Now, at this point, I'm starting to slide down in the seat towards the floorboard. He said, boy, you are going to tell me what is wrong with you before we get home, one way or another. You know, this belt comes off, you're going to talk. Nope, not talking about, Dad. Well, he puts it in drive. It was an automatic. He put it in drive, and we started back out the ridge. And it don't take no time to drive a mile back out this ridge. And by the time we got to the place where I had walked over the hill, I was fully in the floorboard between the seat and the dash, the door, and I was hiding. And my dad looked at me and he said, son, what in the heck is, because he didn't, when he was talking to us, he didn't use colorful language, let's say. I said, Dad, I'm not talking. He said, I'll stop this truck right here and you'll get out and show me what went on. When he said that, I freaked out and started crying. And I'm a 16-year-old boy. I play football. I play football, tackle football, without pads, with pads, whatever. I've broken fingers on my hands and coach just jerk them back in place and put 2 popsicle sticks on them and tape it up and go back in the game and go out there and hit guys. And I mean, just hit them with everything I've got and have no care for injury or whatever. And my dad looked at me and he said, whatever happened to you, it's bad, but you need to tell me. And we drive through these old country roads going home. we get back to I-77 there at the Fairplain exit, and my dad pulls over. At this point, he's tired of asking, and I know it. And I'm just mentally, I was trying to process what I saw, and I remember every detail about that day. And he said, "Look, get up there in that daggum seat, and you're going to tell me what went on, or I'm pulling this belt off." And he reaches down and starts to unbuckle his belt. To him, I was being rebellious to my dad. And I was never that way. If I was told to do something, I was told to, tell me the truth. What did you do wrong? And I'll tell him. And I never done that to my dad, my mom, or my grandmother. And Dad looked at me and he said, "Son, I'm not going to say this ever again." And he had that look on his face that I knew that I was in trouble. He said, "Son, what happened? Did you shoot a deer? Was it the wrong kind?" "Dad, I never fired a shot. My 8 shells are still in my gun case." And he said, "What is wrong with you?" And I told him the whole thing. Because I knew when he started pulling, because he had pulled that belt to where it was up here, almost at level with his eyes. And my dad was a small man. That means there wasn't probably 8 or 10 inches of belt left around in his loops. And I told him everything. My dad looked at me and said, "Son, I told you before them things ain't real." I said, "Dad, they are real. I've never lied to you. I don't make up stories. If I got into a fight playing at the playground or at school, I never lied to him. But I was never a child that got in trouble. I got in trouble one time in junior high school because some high school kids were trying to take money away from me that my parents gave me for lunch. I got into a fight. And, they were going to kick me out of school. And my dad came to school and he said, "Tell me what happened." And I told him same thing I told the principal. And the principal said, "We have to kick him out." And my dad looked at the principal and said, "Look, you kicked my son out, I'm throwing you out that 3rd-story window. You're not going to kick my boy out for doing right." He was protecting himself. He didn't start it, but he finished it. And Dad didn't say nothing else. After I told him, he put in gear, got up on the interstate, and we started home. And he drove for probably 10 miles. Back then, speed limit was 55. He never broke the speed limit. Not one of us kids was in the vehicle. He never broke the speed limit. He turns and looks at me and he says, "Never," and I'm telling you this once, "never, ever tell your mother or your grandmother." And I said, "Dad, why?" He said, "If you do, they're going to believe you right off the bat. There won't be no questions about it. And your mother and your grandmother will stop all of us from ever going hunting again." I said, "But why?" And he looked at me and I'm still crying. He said, "Look at yourself. You're upset. You're crying. You're my biggest boy." He said, "You're pretty darn tough for a kid." He said, "Your grandmother and your mother will believe you, and it scared you that much. We're never going hunting again." So, and I don't know. 10 years go by, never told my grandmother before she passed. Never told her. 2008, my mom had passed. Never told her. Dad knew, but mom and grandma never found out from me.
Did your dad ever believe you?
Oh, yeah. I come to find out about a year before he passed that him and my uncle had been fishing on the Little Canal River. And sometime around 3 o'clock in the morning, something big and hairy walked around. Back then, they had remember those campers where they slide in the bed of a pickup?
Mm-hmm.
Mom and dad had one of those first when I was a kid. Then they moved up to a pull behind. And something walked between the fire and the truck and the camper. They were asleep and they heard something outside. My dad and my uncle both carried, firearms at all times.
Right.
And they wouldn't go outside. And he told me about that almost 1 year before he passed. And I said, Dad, why didn't you ever tell me before? He said, son, when you told me you saw one, I didn't doubt your word. And you kept a promise to me, but not telling your mother or your grandmother. He said, I'm telling you now because I want you to understand that I know where you are, where you've been. So, and my uncle never said nothing. I would have loved to got his side of it before he passed, but I got my dad's side of it. So that's enough.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, did he have that experience before
Yes.
you had your experience?
Yeah. He said I was probably 6 or 7 years old when him and my uncle went out. I think him and mom got in an argument because he wanted to go fishing. Him and my uncle were planning to go fishing, and mom said, no, I want you to stay home. And dad said, no, I'm going to do what I want to do, and you just have to live with it. He went and loaded the camper and went and picked my uncle up and went fishing. And mom was all worried to death. And you know how moms are. They worry about everything.
Yeah, they do.
So yeah, it was a revelation to me in 2019 when my dad told me that he understood where I was at that day when I first seen him when I was 16.
Now, how far in proximity was his sighting to your sighting? Were they close?
Oh yeah, they're very close.
So it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that he knew what you were talking about.
Oh yeah, he knew. He described it. It wasn't the same one that I saw because the one him and my uncle saw was all black. And the one I saw was like auburn hair color.
That's incredible. That's just incredible.
Yeah, I wished he would have told me many years ago,
Yeah.
but Dad was a quiet person. He just didn't do that. That wasn't something, him and my uncle saw it and it was between them and that's where it stayed.
Now, did that day affect moving forward, like your hunting seasons and that moving forward? Did you?
Well, basically for the next 4 hunting seasons, that includes turkey season, squirrel season, bow season, rifle season, I rarely went. And my dad never said a word. And I came home right before Thanksgiving that 5th year. And the next day, I got home on Sunday, and Dad looked at me and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "Well, I figure I'll take Mom to the store so she can, get all the stuff she needs to make for Thanksgiving and all that." He said, "No, you're not." My mom's sitting there, and Mom says, "No, I think it's time you go back hunting with your daddy." And right then, I wanted to blurt out what I'd saw.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad gave me, and I looked at my mother, and I started to open my mouth, and I looked over at Dad. He was sitting there shaking his head back and forth, just like that. I knew to shut up. He said, "Son, tomorrow morning at 4 a.m., you're getting out of bed, you're getting dressed, you're going deer hunting with me and your two brothers and your brother-in-law." I said, "Yes, sir." I went hunting with my dad that next day, and my dad told me, I'm a full-grown man at this point. I'm 21 years old. I'm old enough to go out and drink, do whatever I wanted to, and be stupid. And I'd pay for my own consequences. But my dad looked at me and he said, "Son, it's time to go home. It's time to go with us. It's time for you to get back out in the woods." And my dad made me go with him the whole day. And we hunted from daylight till dark. We never stopped. We'd sit down, take a break, eat a sandwich, whatever, eat a turnip. That was just something my dad started with me. And first day of deer season, I always took a turnip with me. And usually if I had a turnip, I'd kill a deer. If I didn't have a turnip, I didn't get a deer. Don't ask. I know it's a superstition, but it just kind of worked out that way.
Oh my gosh.
And it was, after that, I went with him Tuesday and Wednesday. We hunted Thanksgiving morning close to home. Come home, we had Thanksgiving dinner. And from that point on, I was hunting again. But I knew they were there somewhere. And Dad we never went back to that place after that year. We hunted in different places in Work County and Jackson County. Never back to that long ridge out there. Never.
Now let me ask you. I have had similarly, but I wasn't hunting when I saw the first Bigfoot, and it was walking away from me. So I never got to see it up close. How close to human would you say his face was? Pretty close, pretty
70% human face.
okay. I've heard people describe them as, out hunting and they didn't shoot it because it was so human-like to them that they couldn't shoot it. And I was like, and I have not I think I'd probably piss my pants, honestly. If I had that close of an encounter with Bigfoot, I'd probably have a heart attack. But
No.
just carry me off.
No, I'm pretty sure, Gwen, that you'd be just perfectly fine.
Do
be.
you think it intended to hurt you, or was it just trying to scare you to get you out of there?
Well, when it pulled its lips back and showed its teeth, that's a clear sign of aggression.
Right.
In anything. Bears start doing that and popping their teeth, you're in a world of hurt. I mean, they're going to charge you and they're going to attack.
Mm-hmm.
Especially a black bear. If a black bear gets to that point, you got to fight. They're more deadly to humans when they get to that point than a grizzly bear. And this thing had set its eyes on me because I believe because I interrupted its hunt
Mm-hmm.
for those whitetails, those does. And it took it as, you messed my hunt up. Now you're going to pay for it.
Right.
You're on my menu now. And the steps were not, hesitant. They were deliberate. And the only reason it stopped taking that second step, if it had took that second step, it'd have been 10 feet away. There's no way in this world something's going to get that close to you and you be sitting there in blaze orange with a rifle. It's just not going to happen. I think that it intended to turn me into fat kid soup, pretty much. That's the way I looked at it.
Fat
And
kid
that's the
soup.
reason I had the intent that I did.
Right.
You finish that second step, this gun's going off. And I had the sights right here. 180 grain bullet from a 30-30 at 10 feet. That would have devastated that creature.
So moving forward from that day, you now know they're a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
You've had probably a very scary encounter for yourself. How is it that you move on and get to know so much about Bigfoot, how they act? You've kind of counseled me on a few things.
Mm-hmm.
And before I even met you, I just assumed that, it's whatever. And then when I met you and I told you some of the things that happen around here at the property, you were like, you need to be careful. And that's when I really started to think, oh, like, maybe I should be a little more careful. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was intended maybe is not what is intended. And so
Right.
like it's made me look at things in a completely different spotlight. But I wonder how you got to have that kind of knowledge.
Well, in that 5-year period, I didn't do any hunting. I didn't go seek out these creatures. I knew they were real. And then after I started hunting again, at the end of December of that year, I said, I woke up one Saturday morning and I said, look, I need to know what these things are.
Mm-hmm.
It just like clicked in my head. I need to know. I have to know. And I went out back in the same place that I'd seen that one that afternoon, got out there about 3:00. I parked back up the road. I walked down that road and I had to force myself to walk up the little hill. It wasn't 100 foot long, but that was the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do. Was
Wow.
walk back up that hill and then out that hill about 50 yards. And I walked down there and that boulder's still there and I could picture. Now, mind you, when I went, I was carrying a high powered rifle, a 300 Win Mag at this point. I wasn't carrying a 30-30.
Right.
I'm, and there's no hunting season. I had no legal reason to have that rifle, except it was my protection from, it made me feel better. And I walked up there and I could see the thing walk out from behind. And I'm standing there and I'm not got my eyes closed, nothing. In my mind, I could see this thing step out, everything it did, every time it took a breath, how it moved. And, I could still hear the grunts and then I could hear that growl. And the funny thing is, in that growl, because he was growling with his teeth clenched closed, there was a slight hiss to it at the same time. And I'm sitting there and I'm not sitting, I'm standing against the same tree and I'm going, What am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? I have to know. That's why I'm doing it. I have to know. And I made many a trip late in the evening, be out there after dark to that same place and never, at this point, I went and got some books that was at the library, fiction about Bigfoot. And I started watching all those B-rated movies about Bigfoot. And I'm sitting there going, and I'm scaring myself the whole time watching this. I'm a grown man. You're not supposed to be scared. So for 4 or 5 years, I fumbled around through the woods trying to find these things. I found one footprint in Randolph County, West Virginia. And that's in the mountainous part of the state. I mean, they're pretty tall mountains up there, pretty steep. And I found one footprint crossing an old logging road. And I'm like, and it couldn't have been, it had to be about a week old. And I'm sitting there going, looking at it, and I'm like, they're here too. Well, I found where I'm going to start looking for them again. And because I never could find footprints out there, Wirt County. I looked all over the place, couldn't find footprints, couldn't find anything that these books or these movies said about these creatures. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay attention to that stuff anymore.
Right.
I'm not going to watch them movies. I'm not going to pay attention to them books people are writing. And I quit doing it. And I ran into a guy in Nicholas County, West Virginia, near the town of Summersville. I stopped to get gas one day. I was going to go Bigfooting, and this old guy walked over to me, and it was a little mom and pop gas station at the edge of town. He walked over and he said, "Where you off to, youngin'?" And that's just the way. I mean, back then you answered him because you had respect for your elders.
Yep.
And I looked at him and I said, "I'm gonna go Bigfooting." And he had this wry grin come across his face. He said, "Bigfooting, huh?" He said, "Do you even know anything about these things?" I said, "Nope, but I saw one, and it's been about 9 years since I saw it, and I just have to know. I just have to know for myself." He said, "Well, come over here and sit down." I walked over and sat down. He started talking to me, and he was asking me questions. What happened? What have I done? And whatever I've been looking. And he said, "I like you. You seem like a fine young man." He said, "I can't go with you today, but you come back next weekend and I'll teach you everything I know." Now, this man is known for 40 some years at this point. He's been out in the woods where they are. He's watched them. And he took me under his wing for about 5 years. And almost every weekend, I lost girlfriends. I lost friends because I was going up there every Friday or Saturday night
and looking for Bigfoot.
I lost a girlfriend that I thought I was going to marry. And she looked at me one day and she said, "You're going to either stop doing this and spend more time with me on the weekend, or we're done." I said, "Well, we're done. Bye." Walked away. That's just the attitude I had. And I started doing all that, and I met my first wife. And we started dating. We got married. And I told her the day we got married, "Don't expect me to be home on Friday night or Saturday night." She's like, "You're not going out drinking?" I said, "No, I'm going to go out Bigfooting." She said, "What the heck's that?" And I ran to the video store and found the first Bigfoot movie that I could find and took it home and showed her. And I said, "Yeah, they do that. They don't do that. They do that." And he taught me how to look for these creatures, and he taught me everything he knew about them, or at least most of what he knew about them in that 5-year period. And I paid attention, and I got away from being around him, expecting them to be aggressive at all times.
Hmm.
And then the day came that he disappeared. And that put me right back to where I was at.
When you say disappeared, you mean he just vanished?
Yeah. We were in an area in Nicholas County where typically these Bigfoot have a very strange call, and they're called the Yahoo. It sounds like they're saying Yahoo. It's just long and drawn out when they do their screams. It's just in that area that I found it. Well, a couple other places, but I think it may have been some of that clan going to other places. And we were there. It was in an area that these Bigfoot had run people out of, run hunters out. And not doing it nicely. I mean, running. Guys with high-powered rifles would turn around and shoot at them, and they would still chase them.
Wow.
They were super aggressive. We had never heard of any of them actually attacking someone, but pushing trees over, throwing rocks, and not them little thumb-sized rocks, those rocks that you take 2 hands and pick up and sling them. We went in there about noon, and about 3:00, he said, it's time to go. We start back out, and okay, drinking too much water in the wintertime is a detriment to Bigfooting because you have to go to the restroom quite a bit because of the cold, and the water's cold. You know how it works.
Yeah.
So I walk up the bank, and there's a boulder, probably 400 or 500 pound boulder laying there, and it's beside a tree. And I go up there and use the restroom. When I'm standing there, he's standing at the edge of the trail on a big rock. Now there's snow in patches on the ground. When I come out from behind the tree, he's not standing there. And I scream his name. And I got a loud voice. You've heard me do Bigfoot calls.
I have.
Yeah. And I'm pretty loud when I do them. And I go down there, his boot prints. Now there's snow almost 360 around this rock that he was standing on. No boot prints. The ones he stepped up on the rock from, that's it. And I start running around like a chicken with its head cut off, looking for him. Cannot find him. Ran out to the truck, went down the road because you didn't have cell phones. That was just something for somebody that had more money than brains back then.
Mm-hmm.
And went down to the payphone, called the state police. Troopers show up. They go in, and I guess they found something. They made me leave, go out to the cars. Took me down to the detachment. And I gave a statement, and they grilled me for 2 or 3 hours. I mean, they accused me of killing him, hiding his body, and everything.
Wow.
Yeah. And even gave me the gunpowder residue test of my hands, everything. Nothing showed up.
Oh my God.
And finally, one of them troopers that was on the scene, and a DNR officer comes in, and they have that guy, that detective, state trooper detective, and the other trooper that was sitting in there. I guess they thought I was a pretty bad person. They took my firearm off from me and everything. And they'd already threatened me. They was going to throw me in jail. Took my firearm away. Threatened me 3 or 4 times. Said, we're going to book you for murder. And I'm sitting there and, like, I haven't done a thing. What are you going to book me for? I'm not going to admit to killing someone I didn't do.
Right.
I'm not going to lie to you. Well, we're going to get somebody in here to give you a lie detector test then. Well, that trooper and that DNR officer show up, ask them guys to come out of the room. They come back in. We're going to take you to your car, to your truck. We want you to get up there and get in your truck and go home. Don't come back. Don't go back in there again. Well, I get home that night. Next day, his daughter and his son called me. What happened to Dad? I have no clue. I told him what happened. We told him he should stop that. He was getting too old for this. And I'm like, I'm going to find out. I don't care if they take me to jail for it. It's public land. They can't say I was trespassing. I can't get in trouble. They didn't have it taped off. It wasn't a crime scene.
Right.
And I went up there for about 3 or 4 weeks trying to get in there. And every time I tried, them state police would pull up behind me. You never see them. It's like somebody would see me down the road somewhere and they would say, hey, you need to get up there and patrol and make sure he don't go in there. And I tried for 3 or 4 weeks, different days of the week, 2 or 3 times a week, trying to get in there. Would not let me get in there. And finally, about 6 weeks into it, I got into the area and went looking around and I found his hat. And that's all I found. Didn't find nothing else.
Now, did they ever say that they found him?
Nope. Never. And all the reports, back then, as well as I do, a lot of it wasn't on data or anything like that. It didn't. I think what they did is they filed a report or wrote the report up, and then somebody ripped it up and never put it in the system.
Do you think they know?
I talked to one of those troopers after he retired, and he's told me, plain and simply, we found large footprints in the snow in the area that you were in. And he said they were 20, 22 inches long. And it scared those guys. The DNR officer came up there, saw the prints, and said, we got to go now. And they left the area and quit looking. They didn't look for him. They got scared and left.
I bet that made you very angry, because I would have been very angry that they just stopped looking.
It made me angry in 2 ways. One, they quit looking. That was the biggest thing. And 2, they wouldn't let me go in and look for him. He was my buddy, my friend, very good friend to me. The man, I'd go to his house. He cooked breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever. I mean, he didn't have a wife. His wife had already passed. And he treated me like I was one of his kids. And it hurt me personally that he disappeared. I wanted to know the truth. And I went looking. Finally, when I got in there, the only thing I found was his hat. and it was at an entrance to an opening that went into the hillside, probably 6 foot tall, probably 4 or 5 foot wide. And I went in, I started into that cave, but something told me I didn't have enough with me to deal with what was in it. It's just, it was, I don't know if it was self-preservation or as an act of God telling me to turn around and get out of there. But I found his hat right there, just inside that entrance to that cave. 6 weeks later.
Now, have you ever been back there?
Yeah.
Have you gone into the cave?
Yeah.
And did you find anything?
I found a femur bone. About a year later, I went into that cave. And when I went back, I was carrying a 300 Win Mag. I had a 44 Magnum on my hip. I had 4 or 5 knives with me. I had enough rounds that I could have probably taken on some of the armies in the Middle East and won. But I can't prove anything because I took the femur bone to his son the day I found it. And he said, "Do you think it's my dad?" And I said, "I have no idea." And I don't know if he had DNA run on it or if him and his sister just decided to let it go. Both of them were stopped in that year's time 4 or 5 times apiece by state troopers when they had done nothing wrong. It was a mess.
That's incredible. I mean, I'm so sorry about your friend because that's got to be, had to have been, especially at the time, extremely devastating.
Yes, very.
The
man was knowledgeable about these creatures so much. He had watched a couple of clans in that time, and they would, they would get used to him.
Right.
And he would go in and watch them for 2 or 3 months at a time, and then he'd back out and leave them alone for a few months, and he'd go back and watch them again. And he told me so many things about these creatures. I'm like, well, prove it. Show me what you see. And we tried a couple of times to go into where one of those clans were at, and they didn't accept us because they didn't want us there because of me. Because I guess the way I carry myself, carrying a handgun on my hip, I guess I had aggressive tendencies at that point. I was a young guy. I wasn't really old.
Right.
And, it was, they would just move off. They wouldn't stay where they were at. And we tried 2 or 3 times and it never worked. And he told me, he said, "You're going to start leaving that gun at home." And I said, "No, not after the encounter I had. No, not doing it." And he's like, "Well, they're not aggressive." And I said, "I got one thing to say to you." And I said, "Make one mad, then tell me that."
Yeah.
And the day that he disappeared, we didn't make none of them mad. We didn't run into none of them. All the footprints we seen were probably a day or 2 old that was in the snow. He taught me how to cast footprints, and he said casting them in the snow usually don't do you very good because it's so wet. The plaster heats up and melts the track, and and he taught me a lot of things. And after he disappeared, I started applying what he taught me. And he taught me how to do screams, how to do howls. The howl that I did at Salt Fork a couple of months ago. He taught me that hunt. It took me 6 months to learn that thing.
It's impressive.
And he just, I mean, he had a way of teaching you like a father to a son, trying to teach you something that would, keep you safe when you got older. And that's the way he taught me. And I took to that. And, I invite that man to many of our family gatherings. He came to one. And somebody asked who he knew and why he was there, and he kind of, well, I know him, and he didn't bring up the subject of Bigfoot because it was taboo in my family because of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a real nice guy, and him and my dad talked a bunch that day. But when Mom would come around, they both would clam up. So I don't know what their conversation was because I never asked.
Right.
But he taught me a lot, and I started applying everything that he taught me.
Right.
Like looking at topo maps or looking at, Google Earth and stuff like that. And he taught me things in that you can pick out areas in an area, a big area, 1,000 acres. You can pick out one or two places these creatures are going to lay up during the day, and taught me how to get close to them, and at night to get them to answer you. And one of the things he taught me, he said, "Don't ever tree knock. You haven't a clue what you're doing.
I
Don't."
say it all the time.
And it ain't nothing against you because I know your stuff, sweetheart. I love you to death. You're a very good friend to me. But guys that go out and do tree knocks, they have no clue what they're saying.
And it's funny, I created got knockers
Mm-hmm.
because I was on an expedition with someone who made tree knockers out of branches on the ground, and that's how got knockers got started. But I often say, because I agree with you, that we don't know what we're saying.
No.
I don't really necessarily like even doing calls because, again,
I love them.
we don't know what we're saying. Well, you know what you're saying.
Well, that's because I did like he did.
Right.
I went and found a clan and started watching them for 5 years. 2 or 3, usually once or twice a week I was there. Some weeks it was 3 times. Some I was there every week. I'd take a week's vacation and go up there and camp nearby and go and watch. In that 5-year time, I learned that they work out just like a family,
Right.
just like you and I, just like you and your husband, or me and my wife, and our kids and grandkids and all that. They all do the same things. They provide for their family with what they have and their ability in nature to go out and catch game, and they know the forbs that they can eat and the grasses and all this stuff that won't harm them.
Right.
And they've learned that throughout time. They've learned through trial and error. What made somebody sick? Well, you don't eat that. That'll hurt you. You don't want to touch it. Right. It's like us. We go to a bad restaurant. We're like, well, we're not going to be there again.
And you'll tell everybody not to go there again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
watching them for 5 years go from a clan of 5 to a clan of 9 in 5 years' time, and it's not because they had little ones; it's because they added full-grown adults to their clan. The last 2 years, the last year 4 and 5, they disappeared for 3 months out of that 12-month period.
Wow.
I have no clue where they went to, could not find them. They were not in their cave. I even went inside the cave once, and when they came back, they weren't happy with me because I went in the cave. But the things that I did see when I walked inside of that cave, people do not understand that these creatures, they've been around for thousands of years, and they've been around. And when the Native American, all these tribes of the Native Americans here in the United States, they were around then. A lot of them traded with the Native Americans.
Mhm.
Native Americans taught them a lot of things, you know, and everybody kind of laughs when I say this. They learned how to make fire. Um, and I found a fire pit inside. It was dug out, and there were stones placed around it, like to keep the fire inside that little pit that they dug. And people laugh at me for that, and I'm like, well, laugh all you want, but I can still take you to that cave and show you where it's at, and you go in and tell me what you find.
Right.
But in that 5th year, they disappeared, and when they came back after that 3-month period, somebody took a bulldozer and cut a road into the top of the hill, less than a quarter of a mile. They put a home site in. They started digging the footers and laid block and built this big, nice $500,000 home, and they were building houses down the hill. And they moved. I have no idea where they went. I would love to know. I'd love to go back and see if they remember me.
Right. I'm sure they do.
But the closest I ever got to them when they were there was 50 yards. Binoculars work great when you're at 50 yards.
Mhm.
You can see a lot of detail about their face and the little hand gestures, and you can't hear the verbal part of them unless you're right on top of them, or unless they project sound,
Right.
unless they make loud noises. But I've over the years, I've been growled at, I've been huffed at, I've had trees pushed over on me. I know where not to go now. When they get upset, I can tell when they're getting mad. I can make calls that'll challenge them, and I found out the hard way, you don't challenge everyone. I got a very large beech tree pushed over on me and up in a mud hole
Oh, Jesus.
in the wintertime. Yeah, that wasn't a fun night. I don't go back there unless I have to. Mm-mm. But I've seen Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, mainly here, West Virginia. But I've been in Pennsylvania and done investigations. I've been in Ohio. I've been in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, and I've seen Bigfoot in every one of those states over the
Wow.
years. And the scariest one was when a female charged me. I didn't have a gun. All I had was a machete, and it wasn't very sharp. And she looked like a black widow running at me at full speed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was kind of scary.
I can only imagine how scary that was.
That was almost enough to make me have to go change my shorts and everything. Shoes, socks, yeah, that
Yeah, oh my
it was
God.
close to that point.
I know I upset ours once, and I didn't do it on purpose at all, but I knew that they were upset the next morning because, like, you could have cut the tension in the yard with a butter knife. It was so tense out there. And I was like, and it was all because I researched with Sean Forker and Matt Arner and them, and they came to my house to see for themselves the stories I had been sharing with them. And honestly, I think they came to see if I was kooky or not. And I took them into the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And the next morning, there were some trees snapped off right at the edge of the wood line. and you could have cut the tension with a butter knife. Like, they were obviously not happy that I took somebody into their woods, and I have never taken. Now, I did take a friend of mine and her daughters. Her daughters are just little kids.
Okay.
I had my nephew, and we were up and down. They were in the creek. They were playing in the water and stuff, and that seemed fine. Like, I got no like response from that, but they did not appreciate me taking full-grown men into their woods, and I have never done it again. Never. They don't mind me. They don't mind my girlfriend or the kids, because I was trying to teach the kids a little bit about Bigfoot while we were, going for a walk and that, and they didn't mind that. They do not like me taking. And it was funny because I sat Sean like way over here, and I went by myself way over there. And before, 45 minutes was up, Sean was sitting right next to me on the log. And I was like, hi, what are you doing here? And he's like, if you didn't lead me into these woods, because there are groundhog holes everywhere, there are huge rocks everywhere, down trees. He's like, if I came out here to mess around and scare you, he goes, I'd break something.
Yeah.
He goes, I'd have to be hauled out of here in an ambulance. He's like, there's no way somebody's messing with you like this. And I was like, well, thank you. I think that's a compliment.
Yeah.
He's like, if I wouldn't have let him out there, he probably would have died. Like, and I was, but we don't take guys in the woods anymore. Not anymore.
Well, now if I come up there, can I go?
Sure.
You don't even have to go. I'll go by myself.
I think you have a different understanding. And
Yeah, a little bit.
In my opinion, it's just simply my opinion. I believe they have abilities that we just don't understand. And I think they can tell true intentions of people. And I think my Bigfoot that I have here, I think they enjoy watching us. I think they enjoy watching us live our lives like we would like to watch them live their lives. And I think they find it funny, some of the things that they do here. And I've talked to you about some of the things. I don't know that they'd have a problem with you, honestly, to be serious. I don't, because you have a different understanding about them. And I think they would know that. I just think they would know.
Well, there's one, and I've told you this to your face.
Yes.
There's one caveat to that. They are centered on you.
Yes.
They like you because you don't react like everybody else.
I don't really react at all, to be honest. Like, I take note of things that happen and I just go about my business and I keep an eye, I'm like, okay. I just, we just heard that rock come whizzing through the trees and into the middle of the yard. And I just, okay, I got that. And I just keep right on
doing what you were doing.
Where Mike takes off for the house. He's like, do you see that? I go, uh-huh. He goes, I'm going in. And I think they think that's funny because I would think that was funny. And I'd probably throw rocks at us too to see if I could make
they do it to they do it because they understand, they probably understand it. He's your husband.
Yes.
Y'all are connected. And he's the male in the family. So if they can get a reaction out of him, it's funny to them because it's a male. If they get a reaction out of a woman, they know most women are emotional. Don't get me wrong, ladies. And Gwen, I'm sorry if it upsets you or offends you.
I am an emotional person.
Women are more based upon emotions than men are. Men tend to be more logical and analytical. And women work off emotions. They can get a reaction from any woman they want to. You're different.
Yeah. That
mesmerizes the males in that clan because their females can be emotional too. They have emotions. They have the same type of brain structure. They exhibit the same traits that any human woman does.
Right.
And when it comes to the males, they're like most men. They carry themselves a certain way and they act a certain way, and they're more of the security type. They're more, bravado. They have more bravado about them than a woman does. And they get to see your husband react to that rock, him take off and go in the house. It's kind of a role reversal to them. They're not used to that. So therefore it is kind of funny when he takes off and he doesn't make you go in. And something like that would happen to them, they would make the female leave and they would challenge whatever through the rock. But it's a role reversal, and it does seem funny to them. I would
It
say.
seems funny to me too. I'm not gonna lie, because Michael will take off for the house, and I'm out there, and he'll go, "You coming?" And I'm going, "No, I'm gonna finish what I'm doing." And I chuckle too because I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like it's so funny.
But yeah, they do things. Everybody says, Bigfoot comes and watches you because you're their TV. Well, that's 100% true.
Mm.
The only problem is, and I've learned this over the years, I've dealt with so many different Bigfoot. I've helped 14 or 15 families over the years and dealt with Bigfoot with different temperaments and different features, physical features, size, facial features. I've seen types that look like a gorilla, look like an orang, and that, to me, that's one type of Bigfoot. That's kind of the prehistoric early form of Bigfoot. And then type 2 is what I call the Cro-Magnon. And they look like Cro-Magnon man. I've seen movies on documentaries made by scientists, and they had a brow ridge. Yeah, they do. They have a pronounced brow ridge, and they have those very high cheekbones right underneath their eye, and it's protruding, and they look like Cro-Magnon man. I don't dare say that probably some of the bones that the scientists, or what are they called, anthropologists, have found, wouldn't surprise me if they weren't a Bigfoot, and some of them. And then I've seen the ones that look like humans. And the last two types, I'll leave for later. You know the ones I'm talking about.
I do.
But the human type is the ones I've seen the most. And they usually are not aggressive towards you unless you do something.
Right.
Or if they're trying to get a reaction out of you. And they're not trying to be aggressive at that point, but they're doing something that we perceive, human beings perceive as aggression. Mm-hmm. Like coming up, looking in your window at night. Throwing rocks like they did between you and your husband. They didn't try to hit you. If they wanted to hit you, they would have hit you.
That's what I say. If they wanted to hit me, they would have hit me.
And because I've had them throw rocks at me and hit me in the back from well over 100 yards away, from a hollow to the top of the hill.
Oh my gosh.
And my wife was sitting right there, and she's like, "What's that noise?" And I said, "It's rocks." She said, "Where are they throwing them?" I said, "At me." I had a red shirt on. I was standing up, and a rock hit me in the back. That was the first one of 5.
Oh my God.
When the 5th one hit me, I had turned slightly, and he threw it, and it landed in my chair. My wife picked the light up and turned it on and looked in the chair, and there was a limestone gravel from off the side of the road that came from the hollow that's 100 yards deep behind me.
Oh my gosh.
And she said, "Why are they hitting you with rocks?" I said, it was my clean shirt. It's one of those shirts where it's clean, but it don't look clean. It's got like grease stains, and from where you go out and eat a burger or whatever, and you get the little stains on you can't get out. But it's a shirt that I wear because to me it's an old shirt. My wife gets upset because she can't get it clean, but it smells clean. It just got the little grease stains all over it, and she gets all upset about it, and I'm like, honey, it's fine by me. I don't care what it looks like.
Right.
I'm married to you. I ain't married to anybody else. But, they were throwing at me because I had a red shirt on. They had a target, and I was the target. And they hit me 5 times with those little limestone 57 gravels that wasn't very big. They were just trying to get a reaction from me, and I didn't give them one until they singed that last one off my shoulder and it hit the chair, and the wife looks at it and goes, well, we need to leave. And at that point, it upset me. And I turned around, and that rifle come off my shoulder up to my shoulder. And the safety was going off. And it stopped. I never fired a shot, never had to. But that was enough to pique her interest. And a few years ago, she got to see some. I'm glad of what she got to see. She didn't have to see the big ugly one. So that made me happy. Or else I wouldn't be Bigfooting to this day.
Oh, she would have said, nah, enough's enough. We're not going.
Yeah, that's it. No, we're not. No.
Oh my gosh. You guys have been the highlight of my Bigfoot season this year because I met you at Salt Fork at the camp out.
Mm-hmm.
You did that incredible howl that you did. And when I say it's loud, it is loud. Like, you are an expert caller.
Well, I'm not an expert. I still don't know all of what they're saying when they scream, but I understand a few of their howls.
Right. Well, we got quite the reaction that night.
Yeah, tree break.
Oh,
the bonnet goose. Yeah.
We're all sitting around this fire, and I've been chased by geese before. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I know what a goose sounds like. This thing was so loud, it sounded like it was the size of a goddamn freight train. And it was coming through the woods, and we're all sitting there just waiting for something to just bam out of the wood line. And it's like it came up to us and then was like, too many. I'm not coming.
Well, the fun thing is the fun part about it was I was the one standing up.
You were.
And there's a reason I do that.
Right.
It's because if y'all are sitting down, you're not intimidating.
Right.
It'll focus on me, and I can deal with them. I can talk enough in their language to say, hey, you come up here, you got a big problem. Not me, you.
Right.
And, you can say things to them, make sounds. They understand. Hey, I see a human. He's making our sound, and he understands what I'm saying, and he's telling me, oh, don't come here.
Right.
And the reason I do it that way is because I don't want nobody hurt. Right. I don't want nobody to freak out. That's why, the new Bigfooters were sitting on that one side with their back to it. And the older ones were on the other side. So if it did come up, they would have to turn around. And at that movement, he would have probably ran off. Mm-hmm. But it's the fact of he would have a focal point, and that focal point would have been me.
Right.
And if he would have come in, I would have met him. And
I'll tell you.
And my job, when I do something like that, I do a howl. I make sure everybody's behind me. My job is 1, to make the call, 2, to deal with the reaction.
Right.
And y'all's safety is more important to me than mine ever will be. Right. And my wife gets on to me all the time about that. And I'm like, babe, it's just the way I was raised. I mean, it's ingrained in me. And I don't put nobody in jeopardy. If I can get him to answer me, that's a great night. Nobody's curled up in a little ball, sitting beside their tire, crying and bawling their eyes out. And I've seen grown men do that. I most surely don't want to see a woman do that, because then it might make me mad.
Right.
And especially if it's my wife. You know, she's not very big anyway. She's
No,
only 5 foot.
she's a Spitfire, though.
Oh yeah, don't ever upset her because she knows I'll stand behind her 100%, and then I'll step in front of her.
Right, right. My husband's the same way.
And but I mean, she goes with me now. We go to Bigfoot conferences. We've been to Virginia, West Virginia one, in Ohio, and we've been camping in Kentucky at a place that down there at what was the name of that place, honey? In Kentucky, Cave Run, which is part of the Daniel Boone National Forest.
Okay.
And you know, there's a lot of reported sightings in that area, and there's some telltale evidence near the roads that tells you that there's Bigfoot in there. And I was pointing stuff out to her, and she's getting pretty good, but she's not allowed to do calls.
No. I'm not good at it anyway, so I'm just not going to, because I will totally mess it up. And like I've said to you before, and I say it in a funny way, but it's kind of serious. I'm like, I don't know if I'm making a mating call, if I'm pissing them off. Like, I don't want to make them angry, but I also don't want to, I don't want to go out on a date. So
yeah. We were listening to a lady up there yesterday up at the West Virginia Bigfoot Festival, and she was talking about what I call the woo factor of Bigfoot. And she was doing a very, very stupid thing. Ladies, I'm going to say this once. If it's your time, do not go in the woods. And do not, the second thing, do not, as a woman, take a leak beside of your vehicle next to the woods while you're in a wooded area. That's a big no-no. Ladies, y'all put off pheromones at all times just like men do. So don't do that. Bigfoot it's, and I've gotten reports as far down as Texas, up into Canada, of Bigfoot chasing women, and some women have died from it, being chased down and caught, and they do things to them that I will not speak of.
Right.
So I don't. I warn women, you don't go out and do those two things, especially.
Yeah.
And if you got to go to the bathroom, my camper's there. Knock on the door or just walk in and go.
Right.
Don't ever go beside your vehicle.
Not even in my porta potty tent.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that either.
That thing has been like a lifesaver for me.
Well, you need to park beside me, and you can come in and use the bathroom inside.
Well, I will this year because I'm going to have a 16-year-old student from Germany with us. So.
You're more than welcome. You know that.
I do not want to freak her out as much as possible.
Well, you got to have fun sometime. Come on.
I mean, yes. And she's well aware of what I do. So, I mean, I don't think she believes in Bigfoot, but she'll get there.
Well, they've got them in Germany.
I know. I've seen the reports from Germany. Yeah, it's impressive. Yeah.
So
I recently got told, because I'm going to the UK in 2 weeks to speak at a Bigfoot conference there. And I got told, don't go to that. They don't have any Bigfoot there. And I'm like, well, even if they don't have any Bigfoot there, which I think they do, but even if they didn't, if somebody wants me to come and talk about Bigfoot, I'm going to come and talk about Bigfoot. Because what does it matter if it's there or not? They're interested. They want to know. So I'm going to go share. What the hell, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much how I think of it. What the heck? Somebody wants to know, I'm going to tell them. Whether they have it there or not.
Now, I got one question for you, Glenn.
Shoot.
Are they paying your way over there? Because it's expensive to fly to England.
It is expensive. They are not.
Oh.
My husband and I, we like to travel. So
Mhm.
something just smashed in the kitchen. I'm going to pretend I didn't even hear that. Uh,
Oops.
we have a bank account and we put, X amount of dollars in there from every pay, and that's our vacation money. So it's a Got Knockers vacation because I'm going to pack as many t-shirts and shit in my bag as I can. And I'm going to display them over there on a table for people to buy. But
Mhm.
we're also going to go to like Stonehenge, of course, because you can't go to England and not go to Stonehenge. And
I understand.
almost, yeah. And there's a museum in London. It's a living museum. Yeah, you have to look it up online. It's quite interesting. This living museum. We're gonna go and check that out. So,
Cool.
but we're gonna use vacation money. But it's a Got Knockers trip, so
Mhm.
it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
So your other half is going with you, and while you're there speaking, is he going to be there listening?
Maybe he's not ever heard my talk before. Honestly, he's never heard it. So I don't know. I hope it's kind of all in the same spot that he can also hear the thing. So we'll see, because he's never heard me talk.
Well, now in a few weeks, I'm going to have you on my channel, and
Yes,
he is supposed to be there.
he
If
is
you
going
have
to
to
be there.
drag him, kicking and screaming, and acting like a little girl, I
Oh
don't
no, he'd
care.
love it.
Let's hog tie him to the chair.
Oh, you'll see him. He'll have tape over his mouth. It'll look like he's been kidnapped and held hostage.
But yeah, these creatures they're amazing at what they can do out in the wild. Um, they can adapt just like we do.
Yeah.
Uh, they've been reported in within a mile of Atlanta City.
Oh.
Yeah, in Georgia. I got a buddy of mine. He lives, I think, a couple miles outside of Atlanta, and he's in the woods around his house. There's Bigfoot markers,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I've gotten pictures from him, and there's reports around Atlanta that I've gotten, and they're right there on the outskirts of town. And people don't. They're like, "Oh no, they live in the Northwest."
No, I
No, they
get
don't. They live in every state there is in the lower
that.
48.
I just had the conversation today, as a matter of fact, when somebody said to me, I think I was actually talking to Michael Cook, and somebody had come up to him at the Virginia Festival or the West Virginia Festival and said something about the Bigfoot, like there's only one.
Yeah.
And because I'm talking to Mike, who's like a brother to me, and I'm like, what? Like, I don't even know what my answer would be if somebody came up to me and said about there only being one. I'd be like, how do you count for different size footprints? How do you count for different size sightings? How do you count for the different colors of sightings? It ain't Bigfoot going home and dyeing his hair at the hair salon. Like, there's more than one, people.
Well,
It's kind of
I
crazy.
I was asked that question when not this past one that is with the ECBRO there in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
The year before we were up there, and a guy walked up and he said, "Well, can you tell me about Bigfoot?" And I said, "Which one do you want to hear about?" And he had a look of shock on his face. He's like, "There's more than one here in the East?" I said, "Yeah, there's different strains of them. You know, it's just like human beings are, we're all humans, we're of one race, but we have differences." And he's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "West Virginia." And he told me a place that was off of 64, just inside the West Virginia line. And I said, "Do you know where this road is?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Take that road to the top of the mountain." He said, "Well, you need a 4-wheel drive to get up there." I said, "I know that. Take your truck, you got a 4-wheel drive, right? He said, yeah, I got an old Chevy. I said, take it to the top of the mountain, about dark, go up there, shut your truck off, go out, drop your tailgate, sit on the back of the tailgate. Okay. I said, then tell me how many screams. And I gave you my phone number, and I said, call me and tell me how many different screams you hear off that mountain that night. I got a phone call the next day. He heard 6 different screams from 6 different directions.
Gosh.
And I said, there's one, huh? And he started laughing. He said, I was wrong. There's more than one, and they're right near my home. So, you know, they can adapt to any area that they need to adapt to. They're very adaptable creatures. They're very smart. They're on the same level, brain power wise, as we are. They know how to survive in the wild. We don't.
Yeah.
Unless we learn, you know, and are trained how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But they were born and raised in it, so they know.
Yeah.
And everybody says, why can't you get those game cameras? Every deer hunter out there has got game cameras everywhere. Yeah, they're just like a deer. They see something different and they don't go near it. They know it's human.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like their pictures taken. They're not going to walk up and go, hey, buddy, give me a picture of us. They're not going to do that, people.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I've had guys. Well, why don't you know? I told a guy on a counter from a deer hunter sitting in a tree stand 18, 20 feet in the air, and he was like, "I'm sitting there, and this thing walks up and reaches up and grabs a hold of my foot." And he said, the guy I was telling it to said, "Why didn't he take a picture?" I'd believe that. Okay. Let something walk up that can reach up to 18 feet, grab your foot. Let's see how many pictures you get.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you encounter a Bigfoot, it scares you to a point that a lot of people, their brain will shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of people say, well, I saw this thing walking through the woods, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. It's not because the Bigfoot walked into a portal or created a portal, and it's not because they just started shimmering and disappeared. It's because your brain had too much information overload, and it shut down for a few seconds to process what it already saw. And by the time it takes the information from your eyes again, your eyes send a direct signal to your brain, and it shuts it off.
Okay.
And they don't process it very well. It's fear factor in a human being that shuts them off.
Oh my
And I've
God.
proven that over years.
Yeah. Well, my husband's after me to come finish dinner.
Uh-oh.
We're having chicken and waffles. You want to come over?
Honey.
And they're homemade waffles. I don't do that box stuff.
She's inviting us to dinner. You want to go? Chicken, your favorite. She's putting clothes on.
I'll see you in about what, 6 hours?
Yeah, I can drive a little faster than that.
Thank you so much for coming with us tonight.
It's my pleasure, Glenn.
And I super appreciated hearing your stories, because I'm always wondering how people get started in this, because I know how I got started in this.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because I believed in Bigfoot. So no. it's nice to hear those other stories. So, and I love the Got Knockers gear. I don't know where you would have got that from.
I don't know. It just kind of appeared in my truck when we left Virginia there a few weeks ago.
I gotta say, I'm not getting paid to advertise this, but I love this t-shirt. It's Bigfoot versus Yeti. I get those cryptid crates. Those things are awesome. If you have not gotten a cryptid crate, freaking get a cryptid crate. They are so cool. I've got so many freaking cryptid t-shirts, everything. Dogman, Jersey Devil, Mongolian Deathworm. Like, I wear these shirts everywhere. People probably think I'm a nutcase, but I love them. They're good quality shirts. I got the box today, so they're pretty cool. So, like I said, I'm not getting paid to say that, but if you haven't gotten a cryptid crate, you should try it out. It's pretty cool.
We will.
You get a book and a t-shirt, but this time I got a boxed game. I got a game and a t-shirt and these wonderful, I don't know if you can see them very well, stinky stickers. I'm afraid to open them. It says pine scented, but I don't trust it. So, yeah.
I've never smelt a pine scented Bigfoot. Nope.
No, I'm not sure that's going to be an accurate statement. So, but we do have the festival coming up soon. It's running across the bottom of your screen, and I hope you and your wife can come.
Well, we can try. I think I have a live on the 2nd, but that's on the 3rd. So we will definitely find where you're going to be, and we will try to make an attempt to leave early that morning and drive up.
I would love it. August 3rd in Elysburg. You went sideways. I'm not sure how that happened.
Yeah.
I was like, the Central PA Bigfoot and Cryptid Festival is August 3rd in Elysburg, Pennsylvania. Last year we had 28 vendors and about 5,000 people. This year we have almost 90 vendors. So it's going to be huge. I can only imagine how many people are going to show up this year. So I might have to look for a bigger venue next year. But
20,000 people, you might need a bigger place.
Well, the mall's not being used, so I might just call them. It's indoors. Weather doesn't matter. Lots of parking. Yeah. I don't see a lose-lose there.
Well, as long as it's not 90 degrees and humidity of 95%.
I know.
You can expect us.
Oh my gosh. It was so humid here today. And then it thunderstormed and was even more humid when the storm was over. And we were like, yep. I'm not going outside. I don't care what's going on. I haven't left the house yet today. So yeah, I'm not going outside till tomorrow.
Well, don't worry. Your Bigfoot around your house will be looking in your bedroom window later to make sure you're home.
I don't open that many blinds anymore because I did see him looking in at me one night. And I care not to do that again. I was home by myself, creepy, scary, and I don't even open that many blinds anymore because I don't want to know.
Do I need to bring the stuff with me to make flashbangs?
Oh, you flashbangs? Yes, I love flashbangs.
No, no. These are geared towards
them.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. Sure.
He won't be coming back.
No, I don't know if I want that.
I know but I'm pretty sure your husband would say yes.
It's been quiet around here lately.
They might be off on a powwow somewhere. You never know what they're doing.
They might. Although at 4:30 this morning, I did hear a tree knock when I went outside with the dogs.
Oh. See, they are centered on you, Gwen.
Because I was like with the flashlight. What? I thought I heard something over there. I'm just gonna pretend like I didn't hear shit. The dog's gonna do his business. We're gonna go in the house. All is well with the world.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on with me tonight, and I can't wait to do your show. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And my husband's gonna be there too. So make sure everybody tunes in because that's gonna be a hoot.
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of fun. So have a great night, everybody. Enjoy your 4th of July. I'm a paramedic, so please don't hold the fireworks in your fingers because you might get me that shows up and I'm going to tell you that you're an idiot. So you freaking know better. So enjoy it safely, please, everybody. Safely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go out here.
This has been a CARC Universal production.